Hello, welcome to another episode of Saving Grandma. Today we have a very neat episode because I've invited a guest. As I told you in some of my previous episodes, I was going to start interviewing some people. And today I have Trace here. Now, Trace has had an experience where he had the opportunity to save his grandma, which is basically the title of our podcast. So I was going to ask Trace to tell us his story of what happened the day that he had to help save his grandma. So I'm going to let him start the story and he'll just explain, and maybe I'll jump in every now and then and ask some questions. But anyway, I'll let Trace explain. And he's a wonderful young man and has a wonderful sense of humor. He was going to tell me a joke today, but then he got nervous on the video and decided he wouldn't tell the joke. So we're just going to let him tell his story of how he saved his grandma's life. Trace, you want to tell us a little bit about?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and tell us the story.
So my dad just loves hunting for arrowheads, and he just wanted to go look because it was a really sunny day. And he asked his mom if he wanted to come, which is my grandma, and she said yeah. So she got her hiking stick, and we headed up there. And while we were doing, we were just talking. And then while we decided to head back, my dad was like, "You guys take Grandma back to the truck." And he wanted to go look for arrowheads on the way back. And then there's two rocks that are really close together, and there's like this big of a hole of sand coming through.
On the pathway?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then she slips in there, and she just like said ow, and she seemed like she was fine. So she just sat down for a second. I'm like, me naked, like, "Grandma, you okay?" She's like, yeah. So she stands up, and I see her ankle bending, and her bone like came out of her ankle. I was like, oh gosh. And then she's like, oh, ow. And then she's like, "I broke my ankle." And he's like, "Oh, go call for your dad." So
were you scared at that moment? That seems like it'd be kind of scary.
Kind of, yeah.
Wow, okay. So then she said, go call who?
My dad.
Okay, and what happened next?
So I was like, "Dad, Grandma broke her ankle." And then she's like, "No, don't say that. Just say Grandma fell." And it wasn't even like 2 or 3 minutes. And then he probably bounced through the bushes within 30 seconds. And like he was like, ugh, just bounced in. And then so he's like, "What happened?" He's like, "Grandma broke it." So he had to take apart hiking stick. He took apart his hiking stick and wrapped it around her ankle with a long metal pole to help it stable.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Dad, there's like this broken table down by the truck." We weren't too far, but it was like half a mile away. So we went down, and I tried to get it up there. It still had the legs on it, and I couldn't get it off. And then I'd come back and bring it again like 5 times for the table. I had to try to get the keys for the truck to find something. My dad's sugars were going low.
Now, why would his sugar go low? What's going on there?
So he has diabetes.
Okay.
And he likes to hike. And
yeah.
That's kind of one of the reasons he likes to, instead of sitting on the couch, his sugars like to go high. When they're low, he needs sugar.
Yeah.
And he was getting like really tired, so he needed sugar, and we couldn't find some in the truck. So we went to the truck 2 times.
So you were trying to help both your dad and your grandma who had a broken leg. Okay, wow.
I kept telling my grandma, "Let's just call search and rescue or something." She's like, no. And then it started, I probably went down there 5 more times looking for stuff and had my grandma's phone and the keys to the truck, and me and Aiken. And then it started to get dark, and we didn't have jackets.
Okay. Now, I heard something when you were telling me this story that at some point you decided you were going to pray. Was that at that point, or was that later?
We probably prayed 2 times in that time frame.
Okay.
Like when my dad first came bouncing out, he was like, "Okay, let's say a prayer."
Okay.
And stuff. So, and then it was like really cold, so we decided to go call for the neighbors, and they're just sitting there in their pajamas watching a show, and they just were sitting on the couch after a long day of farm work.
Now, wait a minute. The neighbors weren't that close, though, were they? You had to hike to go find them, didn't you?
They're probably maybe a little close to a mile.
Okay. So you had to hike a mile to go find the neighbors.
Almost a mile.
Was that you and your dad, or who went to find the neighbors?
Me and Aiken. My dad stayed up there by my grandma. He didn't come down once. So it was mostly me and Aiken.
You and your little brother?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And so we went down there, and they just barely showered. And I didn't know what was the front door because it was kind of dark. So I knocked, and they're like, "This is the back door." And I was like, oh yeah, we need some help. Our grandma broke her ankle up there, and we need some help.
Up where, in the mountains?
Yeah. And they're like, oh my gosh, okay. Like, what do you guys need? My dad he has kind of diabetes, so he needs some sugar and stuff. So they brought some fruit snacks and some treats, and they lended us a coat for my grandma, and on the way they let my brother use it. They wanted to have me get one, but I was like, I'm fine. It's like, what do you guys need? And I was like, maybe a horse or a 4-wheeler. So we just decided to bring a horse, and then we couldn't find the trail. So we're up there kind of on the side hiking.
Yeah.
And then I start yelling for my dad, and we hear him. And then eventually when we can see them, we see the trail again. So we were like off the trail on these rocks trying to get a horse up there. Aiken was just like scared. He's like, I'm scared of the horse. I don't want to go by it. But then I was trying to lift my grandma up there, but every time she kind of moved, it hurt her ankle. Mm-hmm. So we just slowly lifted her up.
So you went to a complete stranger's home and asked for help.
Not a complete stranger. My dad and grandma knew them, but not very well.
Oh, from years before then.
I don't know about years,
okay,
but they've seen them.
But they didn't
like
know
once.
you then.
No, they didn't know who I was. There's,
okay.
Like where Gail's son. There's like, I know Gail. Gail's probably seen him once or twice.
Okay.
Gail's my grandma.
So you went and so you got there with the help of that individual and his horse. Then what?
So we couldn't lift her on the horse. It was too much. It was hurting her. So the horse was kind of for nothing. And so we had to bring my dad and the other guy lifted her up, and they're just walking down, kind of running. And then there's like this little river that goes through there. There's probably a few of them. This one like this big, or maybe bigger. But him and them had like hurried, and they just went down. Both of them stepped in it, and we just kept saying sorry because they were like got all their work clothes back on, and they just showered, so it was like felt so bad. And then eventually we got to the truck, loaded them up. I was so surprised my grandma wasn't crying or anything. She was totally fine.
Good.
She wasn't in shock or anything, but...
So you got her to the car, and what was the final result with your grandma? What was wrong with her leg?
She broke her ankle in 2 places.
Wow, that's pretty serious stuff then. So did she end up having surgery?
Yeah, we got there, and my dad's like, hey, we were just staying there visiting my grandma in Glenwood, and we're all the way in Roosevelt, Palco, so it was a pretty long way, and my dad's like, oh, can you bring me some pair of shoes? Can you maybe borrow some of my dad's shoes? Because his shoe was sopping cold wet.
Wow. So this is literally, we've been talking about saving grandma, and we've talked about caregivers and what you can do to help grandma, but you had an experience where, so grandma went on and wanted to go on a walk or a hike with you. She fell and broke her leg, and you had to go find help.
Well, it was me and Aiken.
You and your little brother, but how old's your little brother?
At the time he was 7, but now he is 8, and I was 9, but now I'm 10.
Okay.
But we've had our birthdays recently.
So you took charge, and you and your little brother went to for you it was a complete stranger's home to get help to save your grandma. So I am very proud of you. I'm the other grandpa on the other side of the family, but I heard this story, and I just thought that was the neatest thing to hear how you took charge, and you basically saved your dad and your grandma. You had to get your dad some sugar and some food.
We basically saved him and my grandma.
Yeah, you did. You saved 2 lives. So that's quick thinking, and I heard you were very calm, and you just took charge.
The guy said it was this one movie from this mountain man, whatever. Mm-hmm. What was it called? Do you remember? He kept calling me this person. It was like...
Mountain Man. The only mountain man, Jeremiah Johnson?
Yeah. He said that, and I was like, okay, but I didn't know who the crap that was. So I was like, okay.
So he was saying that he was Jeremiah Johnson, or you're Jeremiah Johnson?
He called me Jeremiah Johnson.
Well, he called you Jeremiah Johnson. Well, that's a good name. That's a good name for you. Well, we're very proud of you. I wanted to post this just on my Saving Grandma podcast because it's not very often that a young man your age, it happens, but a lot of kids just don't know what to do. And you took charge and you got everybody taken care of. Your grandma ended up getting surgery, ended up healing up, and your dad's fine, and everybody's fine. So you did a good job.
Yeah, well, the bad thing me and Aiken were, so we probably went on a hike for 2 miles or 3.
Yeah.
And then we probably went back, so it's a half a mile to the truck and probably maybe a mile to the other person's house. And we probably made maybe 3 trips to the person's house a few times.
Wow.
So we probably went trips and back to the truck and their house. So we probably made around almost to 30 trips. It was a lot.
Wow. So you must have been exhausted by the
Yeah.
time you were, oh my goodness. Well, good job. Congratulations. Well, Saving Grandma, this is our video podcast where here's a young man who literally was put in a situation where he had to make a decision how he was going to save Grandma. And he reacted and he did a good job. So thank you, Trace.
Yeah,
Thank you
I'm just
for
glad Aiken was there with me, so I didn't have
it's-
to do it all alone.
It's always nice to have a brother with you, isn't it? Good job. Good job.